Merrill Hagan is a powerhouse writer and producer across television, film, comics, and video games. His credits include fan favorites like Teen Titans Go, Daniel Spellbound, Marvel's Spider-Man, Harvey Birdman, Attorney at Law, The Magic School Bus, and more. We talk about comics, animation, the craft of writing and pitching, and the state of the animation industry. Now, let's get into the zone with Merrill Hagan. All right, good to see you, Merrill. Thanks for coming on. You've written for television, comic books, film, video games, big, well-known brands, lots of superhero stuff. But I'm curious about your origin story. How did you get into this world? And of all those mediums, which is your favorite to write for?
To answer the last question, I kind of think writing is writing generally. I can tell you, I think comics is the hardest because when you write for TV, you've got like tone and pacing. You can control the pacing, you can control the tone, you can work with actors. Like you lose all that stuff when it's purely, well, you don't lose all of it, but it's a lot harder to control. You can't control how somebody reads something, which makes it exciting in some ways, makes it more difficult. There's like certain structural similarities to everything, and everything really comes down to character. So they all have their advantages and disadvantages. I do think comics tend to be the hardest. The big thing with TV is you've got more time. I think TV has the most advantages. You know what, Mike, you've talked me into it. I like TV the best.
Well, I think I'm with you there. I think TV just offers, I've heard it described as like several long movies, right? Like, I don't know if that's really accurate. I'm curious what you think, but it sort of feels that way sometimes when you're watching a serialized show, especially if it's like sort of episodic, where the stories don't necessarily connect across episodes. It might not feel that way. But when it's like a serialized show, like some of the ones you've worked on, Daniel Spellbound, for example, one that we worked on together, it can sort of feel like a big movie with like big structured arcs like that. I wonder if you prefer, do you like working on shows that are like that? Or do you like the little episodic snippets? Like Teen Titans was more episodic. There were maybe some little arcs in there, but would you agree it was more episodic?
I like worked a lot more on the first few seasons of Titans Go, and like the characters were like, we were like straight up killing them off at the end of like a bunch of episodes where all the Titans died. I think that's been revised, or we got told sometime in the second season to stop killing them off.
Okay.
But like what you're talking about is like the Netflix model, which is that Netflix really wants you to go from one episode to the next as quickly as possible. Like that's their whole goal. So, because you get judged on how fast you can get somebody to go through a series, or, do they go to the next episode? How long do they stay in? I find that the thing that's kind of unusual with the Netflix structure, because they want you to go to the next episode immediately, is like, it's kind of a backwards structure once you get past the first episode, which is like you end on rising action because you want people to get to the next episode quickly. So it's kind of like an act 3, act 1, act 2 structure for episodes. Like you want people like, I've got to see what happens next. So, like a lot of our episodes and a lot of like Netflix animation starts with a big action scene that concludes the story of the episode before. So it's kind of an unusual structure to figure out in some ways.
Yeah, I remember that. And that's really interesting that Netflix like encourages writers to set it up in that way. I just want to step back really quick just because not everyone might be familiar with Spellbound. It's a show on Netflix. It's an animated series that's serialized. There's 2 seasons. It was, well, maybe you'd probably be better at summarizing it than I would, but it's about a young kid in a world of magic who is like hunting down magical items essentially. And I really encourage everyone to watch it if you haven't. It's a really beautiful and well-written and amazing show. Really, I mean, no bias here, but yeah, it's a great show. And I'm curious if we can like dig in on it a little more, because on that show you were the head writer but also a co-executive producer.
Yep.
And I'm wondering if there's like different, because like those titles sometimes don't feel like they hold meaning. Like I don't really know the difference between a head writer, a story editor, an executive producer, a co-executive producer, a co-producer, a consultant. Like what were you doing that was different as opposed to just if being a writer? Like, what makes you a co-executive producer, for example?
Well, to answer your broader question, and then before we go into Spellbound, I do think that especially in animation, those titles are kind of broken. Because story editor is kind of like the highest title you can have as a writer in animation, but it's the lowest title you can have in live action. Well, not the lowest, but it's on the lower end. Um, and they, story editor is basically head writer in animation. Um, but like you're right, like co-producer, co-EP, EP, they can all mean different things. For Daniel Spellbound specifically, what ended up happening on that was that I was being asked to do a lot of things that was a little bit outside of the scope of being the head writer. And so I was like, yeah, happy to do that, but I needed like a title commiserate with that. So like especially in the second season, I was in every voice record. I was helping to do casting. I was giving a lot of notes. There were some Teen Titans Go specials like I straight up did the storyboards for, and I got EP or co-EP credit for that too. So it's hard to say like what's the difference sometimes. It just comes down to what you're able to negotiate.
Gotcha. So it's essentially kind of like in terms of doing anything above and beyond what's on the page. If you're involved in notes or casting or storyboards or doing other stuff besides that, the physical writing, you should be pushing for one of those credits.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's just like, when you're starting out, you get what you get. Like when I was at Adult Swim for a long time and I was in the writer's room for a few shows and I got creative consulting credit, which on one show like feels appropriate, on the other one does not feel appropriate. Like I was straight up like breaking and writing episodes, so I don't know what makes that it was like green back then too. But
Hmm.
uh yeah, you know, titles are funny.
Yeah, sometimes when you're coming up, you sort of are just so excited. At least that was the case for me, where you're just like, I'm just so excited to be here and be doing literally anything that I'll sort of take whatever I can get. Um, and at some point, you have to like trust in yourself that you're, talented or at least working hard enough that you deserve to push for more than that. I want to step back though, because we were talking, we sort of dove right in, but I want to talk a little bit about how you actually got into this. Were you like into superheroes and comics as a kid a lot? Like what made you realize, oh, I want to be a writer?
Well, that's funny. Like I was really always into comic books and animation. Like I think I was kind of like a really sickly kid. I've read comics a lot because that was just what was easy to get into. And I went to school actually to be an animator. I got this internship at Cartoon Network. It's a really weird story, but like I ended up like writing something because they were doing construction on the building and all the writers were sent home. They needed some copy done, and I wrote this copy. And the creative director who ended up I worked for a long time was like, I don't know that you're an animator. I think that you're a writer. And I'm like, oh, if it gets me a job, I'll be whatever you say I am. So I started writing and producing at Cartoon Network, doing commercials and packaging and copy stuff, and then ultimately at Adult Swim. But when I look back now, like it makes sense that I fell into writing specifically for like animation and comics and stuff, because like that's all the stuff that like I really like doing, but I didn't set out with intention to do it.
It was kind of a right place, right time situation.
Yeah, but I think like I do think no matter what, I think I probably would have gone on this at some point. It would have been right place, right time because this is what feels right. But I just don't think I was. I mean, I wasn't super cognizant that this was a job, like
Yeah.
like I didn't know anybody else who worked in animation. It all seemed crazy to me, and when I started working at Cartoon Network, I'd see like these names of people who made. Well, I'd see the people who made Space Ghost, like, oh my God, that's Andy Merrill, that's Mike Lazo, that's Khaki Jones, and just like would lose my mind. I mean, my whole career has been a little bit backwards, and I wish that like, because when I was at Adult Swim, I was in these writers' rooms. Like the two shows I worked on the most were Harvey Birdman and Stroker and Hoop. And this guy who kind of was like, and still is in a lot of ways like a mentor figure to me is Casper Kelly, who did Too Many Cooks, and Casper was the first person that showed me about how to break things into three act structures and how you pitched episodes and stuff like that. I didn't really get that on Birdman. It was just more like, hey, we want to do this episode. Who's got jokes? What's this joke? So like, and I've made some pitches for Birdman that were awful, like awful, 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 because I didn't know what I was like. I didn't know what I was doing. Like I just had no clue. On Stroker, like I kind of got more of an idea, and then the luckiest thing for me is that when I came out to California finally and started working on Teen Titans Go, Michael Jelinek and Aaron Horvath, who ran that show at that time, really taught me a lot about like, here's how you pitch. Adult Swim was really more about like, and still in a lot of ways is about the written word more than the visual. And Jelinek was great about like, this is a funny joke, but this visual is like just as funny and 10 times as fast. So like learning that kind of thing was or relearning it and like learning to trust your instincts was really valuable.
Yeah, the visual medium thing is something that I also like. It took me a minute to get there with animation because like I had started writing more live action, non-animated stuff, and just like little sketches and things like that. And so much of that was wordplay and verbal jokes and dialogue. And then when I started writing animation, I was like, oh, this is a whole other world now where there's visual gags. You need to like put in what is happening visually so that animators know. You also have restrictions a lot of times around what you can, you can't draw a carnival with a roller coaster and a underwater. Like there's particular things that are constraints on animation. And I wonder if you find those constraints to be helpful or limiting. Sometimes I imagine they could be helpful because it's like it narrows down what you can actually do. So you don't have to think about
Well,
every
like,
possible outcome, but
to your larger point, like I think because all of us that were like brought up on television in some ways, like of a certain age, really like even if like you grew up like watching the Nickelodeon live action shows, right? They're all written, that three camera stuff is written like they're written like short plays. And like they're not especially written like strong visuals. Like some of them maybe more than others, but they're more like we've got to get these actors on this set, the standing set, right back off. The strength is in wordplay and punny stuff and writing these little jokes. But you think about the funniest, not even just animated, like live action, like we're a visual medium. So like you think about there's something about Mary, like the funniest scenes in that are like the visual scenes. That's something you can't really get across on paper. And I think sometimes that's harder because as writers, like and really execs, like you want to be able to like read it and comment and put on and like when you're giving it to an animator, you're giving it to an actor to do something funny visually, it's out of your control a little bit. Like that's where you just have to trust that process. But to your other point about restrictions, I think it's good and it's bad. Like everyone always is like, oh, animation, you can do whatever you want. And as we've gotten more into CG animation, like it really isn't that way because you can't have characters interact with water because that's too difficult. And you've got a certain character count. So make sure you have like every CG show I've ever worked on, there's always characters with masks so that you can like do 30 of that same character as an army, and then you don't have to worry about lip flap and then or what they like that they're not all like, you can't tell what race or gender they are necessarily.
Right. And
And
CG being like a 3D show, right?
3D show, a 3D
Yeah.
show. The more characters you have on screen, the more expensive it is to render. So you have to be mindful of like you want most of your shots to have two characters on it. One like you can have a certain number with three. You can have like there's all sorts of crazy restrictions on every show. Like how long are the shots? How many cuts can you have? Like how many shots per episode can you have?
How much are you thinking about that when you're writing an episode? Like, is that, coming into play when you're breaking stories and actually physically writing out the episode, or is that something that like comes in once notes?
100%. You know, like what you want to do and what's possible and what someone else wants to do and what's possible. I'm trying to think of an example I can use and not get somebody in trouble. But like the live action version is like the live action version is Star Trek. Like they go to different planets every episode, but do they? They really just basically stay on that bridge and like you see like glimpses of things
Right.
because that's the cost efficient way to do it. You know, we have to do that CG, that 3D look because that's supposedly what kids want now. But like you go back and look at shows from like the 80s, like G.I. Joe or Super Friends, and like here's a bajillion characters with a
Hmm.
bajillion backgrounds, and they're all wearing different costumes. Like the other, you know, you can only switch the costumes how many times in a seat, like they have to wear the same clothes, they have to do this, you can't do that. So that stuff is rough, but then sometimes like knowing what the restrictions are, it can really be helpful because you're like, okay, like these are where the walls are. Like, how can I make this work? I I like to picture, I know this is not an original idea to anybody, but like I picture it like a puzzle. I'm like, what's the way, like, here's the restrictions. How can I get this done in the best way possible? To get this character to where I need him to be, or get her to where she needs to be, and make it fit within these parameters. And that is kind of like the fun and the challenge of it sometimes.
Yeah, that's how I feel too. Do you experience that on a show like Teen Titans Go too, where it's not CG? Like, are those?
100%.
Yeah.
It's a new, I don't know when or where that changed, and I have a feeling if I did know, it'd probably be like sad, like, well, we don't actually torture people in the country to animate anymore. Although maybe they do. Uh, but like on Titans, there definitely were bottle episodes or ones where
Oh, sorry. Could you explain a bottle episode just in
oh,
case
so
anyone
like a
doesn't know?
bottle episode is like traditionally it's like it's where somebody can't leave, like you have one set, that's it, because you can't afford to build any more sets, you can't have the characters go anywhere, like it's like basically like they're stuck in a bottle. So I definitely have bottle episodes of Titans. Here's one, like I did one with the middle of the episode was built around the song I'm a Little Teapot. And then it had been animated that way. And then it turns out someone owns the song I'm a Little Teapot. And like, uh-oh, like that's not gonna work anymore.
Oh no.
Uh and that's a good 2 minutes of the episode. Like,
Wait, who owns that song? I need to
I don't
know.
know. It's like one of those things that somebody owned or they claim somebody owned Happy Birthday to you.
Right.
So it's like, okay, we have to like quickly fix that. If you go back and look at the early Teen Titans Go episodes, like the bad guys never talk. They or rarely talk. There's nobody on the streets of Jump City. Like it's just like any other show. Like it's done to be quick, fast, and cheap.
Sometimes the bottle episodes are really fun, though. I mean, I can't think of an animated one off the top of my head. The only one that comes to mind is like the Breaking Bad episode where they're stuck in the lab and they're trying to kill the
Yeah.
fly. But sometimes those parameters can actually churn out a cool episode.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of like, and Daniel Spellbound in season two, there were a lot of times we had to go back to sets from the first season because like they had spent too much money building the set. And like well, I guess they're going back to this place again. Like sometimes it made story sense and sometimes it was a real stretch, but like that's just what had to happen.
Yeah, I want to talk a little more about maybe the difference between how it was writing on a show like Spellbound versus Teen Titans Go, because Spellbound, like we talked about, is 2 seasons, and it was kind of rare because we knew we were going to get 2 seasons. So you knew that you had 2 seasons of runway, whereas I think I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like most shows you don't know that up front. Usually it's like at most you're getting one season, although maybe it's been different with
It kind of
Netflix.
depends. Like I feel like most shows that I've been on, you know that you're getting like 20 episodes ish. Like the big thing right now in animation is that people usually like in order to make animation work, you have to have 20 episodes because otherwise like financially it just doesn't make sense a lot of times. So a streamer will order 20 episodes, but then they'll only announce 10 and be like, that's a season of this, and then a season, like, and then it's another season. Unfortunately, and luckily, this wasn't the case on Daniel Spellbound, which is very rare, but very fortunate. Luckily, like they'll order 20 episodes and then they'll tell the animators like this is one season and then they announce it as two seasons and like really truly back in the day like in the 90s or even the early 2000s those animators began to bump between seasons like that kind of thing has disappeared.
So it's kind of a financial decision in some ways, kind of
Yeah, and you have to
a little
amortize
sneaky
like
way.
yeah, it's so expensive to build models to, even in 2D space, like you have to build all these models, you have to get so much use out of them. It's very rare you get less than 20 episodes.
What about like the tone for shows like Spellbound or obviously Titans Go has a very different tone. How do you balance or figure out what the tone of a show is going to be? And then how do you balance like Spellbound, for example, had action, it had comedy, it had heart. Like, how do you find the balance when you're writing it? Does it come out in the writing room? Is it something that's like pre-planned ahead of time? Is it something that just sort of finds its way when you're writing? Like, how do you figure that out?
I think some of it, the one thing that's really sad about only doing 20 episodes is, and if you look like most shows now, the good news is you get 20 episodes. The bad news is very rarely do you get past like 25. Like even like on some shows I've been on that were like unquestionable massive successes. I've been on a show that's been over 40 since Teen Titans Go.
Why
Maybe,
do you think
maybe
that is?
if you order 20 episodes, right? And you put out, here's 10 episodes, typically in the kid space, you put out 10 episodes and then 6 months to 8 months later, you put out 10 more episodes. And if you haven't like greenlit 10 more episodes, like, or 20 more episodes quickly, then by the time you get more episodes, like the train's already left the station and people are on to the next thing. Like there's been a couple times recently where I've been called in to work on like some massive streaming shows um that were like, okay, we're figuring out the third and fourth season, but just couldn't get it in time. And like, oh, it's gonna take at least 3 years for this next episode. So kids will be on to the next thing. So I think that's a little bit sad. I think that's a little bit of like, TV being what it is. Like it's a little bit gone. And some of it is that people want to just stay like, Teen Titans goes up into the 400 episodes. Like I think SpongeBob is right there with it. Like, and I also think like for some of these more tried and true brands that like it's the same thing in live action. Like you make some new episodes, the old episodes like go up in value. I don't know how it was for you, but like for me, I'd come home from school. It didn't matter if this is a Batman animated series episode I'd seen like 50 times. Like it was the one that was on TV right then. That's what you'd watch. In the streaming space, like you put out a season of a show like Daniel Spellbound, for instance, you watch it, and then there's no real incentive to watch it again. And it's hard to build brand loyalty or any kind of brand like that. How many breakout hits really last in streaming? And it's a little bit snake eating its own tail.
Reruns are kind of a thing of the past now. I mean, I can't remember the last time I watched a rerun of something. uh, because of that instant like clickability. There's always something new on Netflix. There's always something new on Amazon Prime. You don't. I had a very similar experience to you, where I would go home after school. I would watch, the four shows that were on in a row on YTV or whatever channel, and those were the shows that were on, and that's what I watched, regardless of whether I'd seen them or not.
Mhm.
And now I think kids are consuming media and content so differently that they don't have to do that, and why would they? So it's interesting how to see how streamers and YouTube and this whole structure is just like changing the way that shows are being financed, being made. Do you think it's a good thing, or do you think it's a challenging time because of that for animation?
I mean, I think it's unquestionably a challenging time for animation. Like most of the, I think like the record, it's record unemployment in animation. I also hear people say stuff all the time, like, well, you know what? Kids just watch YouTube. They just watch YouTube. But that's not true, because what YouTube, they're not just turning on YouTube and like, what's on YouTube today? Like they're following channels or brands or influencers they like. And what do they do? Like Mr. Beast is a great example. What does Mr. Beast do? He puts out 3 episodes a week, always on the same day. They might like on, where to go to find Mr. Beast content. It's not, he doesn't drop 10 and then disappear for 8 weeks. Like,
Right.
and then the streamers have, by and large, for kids television, just been like here's 10, I don't know, we'll see what it does. And like, it does not work like that. Kids we like if you study kids psychology, which I've been forced to do from different streamers, like I've had to go to classes about it. Like kids need play patterns and they want play patterns, and there's repeatability that like drives things home to them. So I don't understand
Can you explain
why
a play pattern?
on Power Rangers there's a threat, the Power Rangers meet the threat, the threat gets bigger, the Power Rangers like, now we have to call our Zords. Now the Zords have to form the Megazord. Like every episode has a play pattern to it. And when you buy the toys, it's got that same play pattern. I'm a big superhero fan, like you said. Like Peacemaker came out on Thursdays. Like I knew Thursday night, if I didn't want to get spoiled, I had to see Peacemaker right then. And it becomes appointment viewing. And we see that it works. Like, that's why The Pit was such a giant show. It was a 16 episode weekly drop that people were like, you have to watch what's happening with The Pit. So it's crazy to me that as an industry, we're just like ceding to like, yeah, that's just YouTube's one. Like it doesn't have to. It doesn't have to be that way. This is what we used to do.
It's interesting because, like, I remember when Netflix first started to get big, part of the appeal of Netflix was you could binge watch 20 episodes of this show, and that was like a big selling point for them. And now it's sort of almost reversing, where people are like, they kind of like that appointment viewing, because it keeps them coming back.
Well,
Um,
it's like you look at the most popular shows, they are shows that have like a bajillion, like, like 2 summers ago, I think Suits like went crazy. Everyone, oh, Suits is suddenly this huge show. Like, yes, because there's hundreds of hours of Suits. You can just watch it. And when you look at the shows that do really well on Netflix that are animated series, like Teen Titans Go is one of them, which is not, I don't know if it's in Canada, but it's not available in the US on Netflix, but it's still like in the top 10% of shows that Netflix streams, because like there's 400 episodes of it. Like you can just sit a kid down and just let it rip, and it becomes the de facto babysitter.
I hate to keep coming back. Well, actually, I don't hate. I love to keep coming back to Teen Titans Go because it's such a unique, fun, weird, hilarious, silly show. Uh, the part that I really enjoy about Titans Go, like a lot of times you'll see superhero shows, and maybe you'll hate me for saying this, but sometimes they feel similar. It's like you have this tortured protagonist who like does a thing and then he tries to be a hero. Teen Titans Go feels very different from that. I mean, it's just so silly and bright and fun. It pokes fun at itself. It has episodes that are like I remember there was one episode about mortgages. I'm
Mhm.
like there's just weird, they just do weird stuff. They try, it's meta sometimes. I feel like that's a show that you could sit kids down in front of and watch, and they'll be like super engaged, but also the parents will like watch it with them. It's a very adult watchable show. I wondered how, if that played into the writing at all. Like, were you thinking like, oh, I'm going to sneak this adult joke in, or is it just for your own little pleasure that you sneak those kinds of jokes in, or is it really geared towards kids and it happens to be funny to adults? Or like, was there a cognizant like thought process behind like, hey, let's make this a family watchable show?
Titans Go wasn't run that differently than Adult Swim shows I worked on, which is like, what can we do to make each other laugh? Obviously, there's like jokes that I would were appropriate for Adult Swim that are not appropriate for Teen Titans Go, but not as many as you would think. If we could make each other laugh in the room, like then we're like, okay, this works. And then I think also like the storyboard artists, the animators in that show, like there's so many things that and again the voice actors are so brilliantly funny and like I'd write something and then I'd hear the performance and then you'd see what the storyboard people did to it at every level. It was just like plus up, plus up, plus up. How can we make this funny? I mean, like you know where the line is for kids stuff, and if you don't, like somebody will tell you, but it's more about like making it entertaining for yourself.
You're writing for yourself in a way, and you just sort of hope that this thing that you think is funny or this thing that you think is interesting is like going to resonate with other people. And oftentimes, at least in my experience, it's like when you're trying to write for someone else, it's the word, like it falls flat the most. I don't know if you feel similar about that.
I feel like the two biggest mistakes I've made in my career are for projects that are not going to come out. And in both of them, I feel like I betrayed myself in that I did what I was being asked to do, even though I'm like, well, this is just what I'm being told I have to do, even though I know instinctually this is not correct. Did it, and then it's like, oh yeah, it wasn't correct.
I'm sure that happens so much. I'm sure that happens a ton. I had a sort of inverse experience once where uh, I pushed back against, like, there was something that they were telling me to do in a way that I felt was wrong, and I pushed back possibly too hard. And they were like, well, we're just going to get someone else to do it then. And then I think it's like a two-way. You have to like walk the line of like,
Well, it's
well,
hard. It's
yeah,
hard when you're like, it's always hard to know where that line is. I like, and it also depends on where you're at. Like, what are you there to do? Like, if I'm there to run, in those two cases, I was there, both of them, I was in a head writer position. I think like there's other times I've been in a writer's room where I've seen people push too hard. And I'm like, if I'm there in service to someone else, like if you've hired, if I'm not the head writer, I'm there to help you, then my goal is to serve your vision as best as I can. So for me, I'm like, if something is going in a direction I don't like, I'll be like, or I don't think whatever. I'm like, I don't think this is gonna work. Like I'll be like, hey, I don't think this is gonna work. Here's a solution.
right.
And if they say no, this is what we're gonna do, I really don't, I really disagree. I might a second time be like, are you sure? Because XYZ. But then ultimately I'm like, you know what? This is not, I'm here to serve someone else, and this is not serving what they need. And like then I'm happy to just like, all right, well, if we're going down this road, let's make this road the best way we can make it for you.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let me go back for a second. So I'll hopefully be hired again one day because uh, in that instance that I was describing, I was the creator and there was no one else on at the time. So
Sure.
it was really just a me thing. But if you're in a room, I totally agree. You need to be like supportive of,
Yeah. No, and like I would not, I know what you're saying. I get why you're saying that. But like I
yeah,
have been in rooms and I've known writers who've like, I'm gonna plant this, I'll die on this hill. And like,
right.
hey, you died on that hill. You certainly did.
Yeah, I think what you
Fair
said too was
point.
a really important point about if you are like flagging, if you're in a writing room or in a creative situation in general and you're flagging a problem, I think offering a solution is so valuable. Even if it's
Yeah,
like not the thing that they end up using, it's like at least you're not just tearing someone's idea down, you're offering a way out.
yeah,
Because you know it's really easy to just go, well, that sucks, so let's not do that idea. But like, where does that leave everyone else? You know, it's like it's kind of destructive to the creative process unless you're like willing or able to offer some at least some kind of pitch or solution.
yeah, I agree.
I wonder about pitching when you're pitching either an episode idea or a whole show. How much do you prepare for that? Are you like, let's say you're pitching an entire show. Do you know everything about the characters? Do you know everything about the world? Have you already built that all out? Or are you sort of going in with like a one-page document that's like loosey-goosey and you're trying to pitch it to see what sticks?
Okay, my feeling on pitching is a lot of times like you want your show to get sold, but you also you're in front of people like if I'm pitching an original show, like the chances are you're gonna buy it, unfortunately, are like low. But I mean, I never go in there being like, don't buy the show. Like I want you to buy the show, but like I also need to be like cognizant of like this is an impression that you're making on people who could potentially hire you for other things. Right now, everyone's pitching like monster shows. So I don't know what monster show you have in development. I don't know, like if I'm not that I'm pitching, I'm not pitching monster shows, but like if I came in with I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you have in development. I don't know what it's close to. And if I pitch something that's somewhat close to what you're in that territory and you're not going to go with me, great. But maybe because you like the pitch, you'll hire me on something. So I don't like going in half cocked. I worked on a show with a stand-up comedian, and when we went to pitch it, like we had a 15-minute presentation down, and this guy um had worked in like all the pauses, like we talked to, like how we were going to joke with like all the ad libs, and it was a tight script, even though it seemed unscripted when we presented it. And it really taught me a lot about how I want to pitch things and how I've pitched things since then, like how I was going to lead people through that world, how I was going to present it, how quickly. Like I think, pitches need to be 15 minutes or less, but roughly around 15 minutes. And but I also think there's a lot of value sometimes if you get asked a question about a character and you don't have the answer, like be like, I don't know yet. Making it up on the spot is like, I think can be more harmful. I don't necessarily always have the best answer on the top of my head. I can be like, I need to think about that. I mean, if you come up with something really quickly, I think it's fine, kind of, but like, um, I think it's fair to say like I don't have that answer. Like that's an interesting question. Let me think on that more.
You want to feel like you have it all figured out from a just a standpoint of like looking confident, looking like you know what you're doing. But I think being able to say, hey, I actually don't know that. That's something I'll think about. That's a really interesting point. That almost validates the exec in a way
Yeah.
where they're like, oh, cool, like I'm contributing to this too in a way. And then they get invested and then that could like lead to something more down the road. Now, I wonder like uh, these days, it seems, and I don't know if you experience this. I mean, you're in LA, I'm in Toronto, so there might be a different vibe. But at least here, it seems like there is less inclination to commission projects that don't have existing IP. And what I mean is, if there's a show that's, I don't know, pick any brand, right? Like that's existing, that has a book series or a video game series or just some built-in audience. It seems like streamers are more inclined to adapt that show into a series as opposed to like taking brand new original stuff that's never been done before. And I feel like there's a little bit of like remake fatigue that's happening where you're like, oh, they're doing another one, like another version of this. And I wonder why you think, is it just because first of all, I wonder if you experience that in LA. And I wonder why that might be happening here. Is it just because it's safer to make projects with existing IP?
I think everyone on some level, including like development execs, everyone's worried about their jobs, right? So if you're like choices are taking a big and everything right now feels like it's a big swing because so few things are going into production. So if you're like, I'm taking a big swing on this original thing, or I'm taking a big swing on uh Batman, like you're like, oh, well, of course I'm gonna pick Batman. Like I'm not, that seems like it's, less risk. So I think there's like a lot of risk aversion, is what's driving it. I also think we're at a really interesting time because I do think some more original stuff is happening because like ultimately, especially in kid space, like this, like it's tacky to say, but like merchandising does drive a lot of it. From my experience, we're seeing is like people either making original stuff for YouTube or a lot of like selling foreign rights first, making the show and then selling it back to streamers after it's made because like Netflix is going for these huge swing four quad Minecraft, um, Magic the Gathering, Stranger Things, like big brands. They're not in the business of doing like Centaur World or Daniel Spellbound, like that kind of stuff right now. What people's hope is that they can make stuff internationally and then try to come back and sell it to Netflix, try to come back to sell it to Disney.
Being such a weird time right now with all that stuff going on, what advice would you give to young writers who are looking to, who are maybe mid-level or early level or haven't even got a foot in the door? Would you suggest you writing specs? Like that's sort of what I did, writing specs and taking people out to lunch a lot of times. But is that still good advice today, or is there something else they
I
could be
think
doing?
like you know what? It's just like in all blunt honesty, it's rough skiing right now. It's rough skiing for people who've had these jobs for a long time. And like, there's, uh, I feel like I'm more lucky than most people I know to have the jobs I have. Like there's very few people I know who are like, I'm doing great right now. Like very like I can count them on one hand. And we're at a period where because live action so everything's so shrunk that live action people or writers are coming into animation. I think some of this we're starting to see like a little bit of a turn. If I was starting out now, I would say writing a spec, you have to do that. Networking is always like very important. However, whoever you want to network with, like it's one of the biggest things you can do. Like your fellow writers, like you were taking people lunch, like that's a huge deal. I think just right now, it's like time to be like, at least for a little bit, to be realistic and be like, it's gonna be slow and hard, right? This is in my years of doing this, it's the worst I've ever seen it. I do think it's slowly picked up from the bottom, but like the bottom was bad. It's
It's
a bummer.
No, no, that's okay. That's the reality, man. I mean, there's always going to be content, but it feels like because there's such a shift in how it's being consumed and how it's being bought and how it's because we're sort of in this weird transitionary period, it does feel like there's less things getting made. Why don't we lean into this? Is there something you've learned about storytelling in your years of doing this?
It's so easy to break things down to structure, and it's easy to forget like the value of like surprise and what that can do for viewers. Like when you do something that's like when you like any kind of comedy, but any kind of storytelling is about rhythm. And when you break it in a really funny way or interesting way, like that, the value in that. I think we did that a couple times, especially in the second season of Daniel Spellbound. But like this summer that movie Weapons came out and like I saw it the day it came out. I had no clue where it was going. And like there's something that's so like because the rhythm was so interesting and it like shifted rhythms so quickly and like you look at it, it's such a traditional structure, even though like you just don't like I saw it and felt like a magic trick had been done in front of me.
Yeah,
Oh,
there's something weird. I mean, I don't, you probably know people like this, or maybe I try not to be one of them, but when you're watching a movie and then you can sort of predict what's about to happen, it's sort of in a weird way, you're like gratifying because you're like, haha, I was right. But also it kind of ruins it in a way. And it's nice when that rhythm isn't predictable. And so like building in a structure is one thing, but also having it be like not so telegraphed that the viewer knows what's about to happen is a line to walk as well.
yeah, I
Uh,
agree with that. And like also like it's interesting, like there's a lot of times you watch a movie and you can see like, oh yeah, that's not what they wanted to do. That's what they were forced to do right there.
Oh, that's really funny. Do you, not to like throw one under the bus, but is there one that sticks out for you that's like that?
You know what? Like the way that the Neutron movie looked, but you could see all kinds of stitching. Like there's all sorts of like, oh, that's a thorny issue that will never
Uh-huh.
get again for the rest of the film. But I like the movie though, so
Fair
oh,
enough. Well, Merrill, thanks for being here. I like to end the podcast by asking one last question. And that's
sure.
about a time that you stepped outside of your comfort zone and how that changed your life. It doesn't have to be a big thing, could be a small thing, but just any time that you've really like felt like, oh, I'm a little uncomfortable doing this, but I'm going to do it anyway.
This is like it's not gonna seem like it's for writing, but it kind of is in a way where about like 11 or 12 years ago, I decided I was going to run a marathon for the first time. Maybe it's 13 years, who knows? I was like, I'm going to run a marathon. And I wasn't really much of a runner. The first time I did a half marathon, I'm like, I'll never do a full marathon. That's crazy. But then I did it. And then I continue to do them. And I feel like it's been really good I come up with a lot of ideas on them. Sometimes like I just empty my head out. Like it's a nice space where like I'm an easily distractible person. So if I'm like running for 2 or 3 hours to train, like I'm not going to get distracted with my phone or whatever. And it still makes me uncomfortable. And there's still days like I don't want to do it. And it took me a long time to be like, this is what like there's a lot of stuff in my life where I've had to be like, not I haven't been clear about like who it is I want and what I am doing and like and embracing that like what actually like I like running these marathons. I like doing this train. I don't always like it, but like embracing something that kind of made me uncomfortable is it's paid a lot. It's paid off really well. It's made it a lot easier for me to think and to have headspace to do the things I want.
I think so many people can relate to what you're describing of that feeling of like not being sure of what direction you're going or what you're doing or what is the purpose of this or that. And I do think that exercise in general, I haven't run a marathon, but exercise for me has been helpful to just like clear your head, get out of your thoughts, get away from the phone and the screens. So that's really cool that it's been helpful for you and the discipline it takes to like actually keep showing up because like if you're going to do a marathon you have to do a lot of training I would imagine so the
Yeah,
discipline to take that it takes to keep showing up to do that is commendable and I'm glad it's been helpful for you.
thanks. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's been a good thing for me. It's still like there's times where it makes me uncomfortable, and um it's a weird business that we're in. Like like the part of me that's like I like comic books and animation, like it's easy to talk with the animators about that. And like sometimes like it's hard for me to be like authentic, which is like I'm also a dude who likes sports and likes to exercise and which sounds so stupid. Like why where would that be a detriment? Only in animation. Uh, but the more you can be like true to yourself, I think the better it is.
Well, now that you've told me that, I'm cutting you out in my life. No more Merrill because he exercises. No, thanks, man. This has been really cool. I really appreciate you being here, taking the time to chat with me. I think a lot of people can learn from this. And if you haven't watched Teen Titans Go or Spellbound or any of the hundreds of episodes Merrill's written, you should definitely go check them out. He's done so much cool stuff. Thank you for being here, and thanks for taking the time.
Oh yeah, happy to be here.